Hello, and welcome to a season closing, trunk slamming college basketball podcast. I'm Mike Hlas of the Cedar Rapids Gazette and the Gazette.com. Joined here, of course, by Nathan Ford of the Gazette. And we'll talk about the season that just ended and the one ahead. But first, I'm doing a plug. The Ultimate Know-It-All Sports Trivia Challenge is coming up on April 15th at 5:30 p.m. here at the Gazette.com. It's your chance to put your knowledge of Iowa sports to the ultimate test. Join the Gazette's Leah Van and Sam Paxton at this free virtual event as they challenge you with milestone moments, stats, people, sports history. Let's see how smart you are. 2 winners per round will walk away with a prize pack and advance to the live championship event in August. Again, the first round's April 15th. Register now for free at thegazette.com/ultimate, thegazette.com/ultimate. Our focus is Iowa here, of course, so I guess I'll connect last night's national title game to the Hawkeyes. They lost to Oregon, which lost to USC, which lost to Gonzaga, which lost to Baylor. End of story. Does that mean the Hawkeyes were a long, long ways from the national title?
On paper, I guess it does, doesn't it? They're a few lines away, but I think from what we saw throughout the season, they weren't. In terms of how many teams were in between them and Baylor, I'm not sure they were that far away. But in terms of just if you were sort of ranking the teams on tiers in the country, I think it was pretty clear all along that Baylor and Gonzaga, were a step above everybody else. Michigan might have been close when they were at full strength. And then, Baylor, wow. That they might have been another step above Gonzaga. So in terms of that, there probably weren't too many teams between Iowa and the championship, but there was quite a gap, I would say, between Iowa and Baylor in the end.
Yeah, were we missing anything on Baylor? I can vaguely remember when we started doing these several weeks ago that I said I thought Baylor might be the best team, but as time passed, I'm not sure I held to that conviction very hard. But did we simply just miss how good they were, even though they were ranked number 2 and they were running side by side with Gonzaga all season?
Maybe a little bit. I think part of that has to do with just how historically great Gonzaga was during the regular season. That just became the story, them trying to go undefeated and the way they were just blowing teams out too. Yeah, people are going to say that they have an easy road in their conference, and they do for the most part, but they handled some really good teams in the non-conference and in the tournament. And Baylor was always kind of right there, but I think they just weren't ever really the main story again. And I think after their COVID pause, they had some struggles. Iowa State almost beat them. And so then people kind of maybe put them in sort of a 1B compared to Gonzaga. And that turned out to be a mistake. I don't know if you saw that perspective too.
Yeah. I think that's right on. It's a cliche. I don't know if cliche is the right word, but everybody says it, that guards win championships. But geez, what more proof did you need when you saw Baylor last night? Davion Mitchell, who was sensational. And we all had sort of known about Jared Butler and his greatness. And then you look at Gonzaga and yeah, they've got Corey Kispert, who's going to be a lottery pick, and Drew Timme, who's probably as good a center as there was in the country. But Jalen Suggs is the guy who made that whole deal go. And this is where the Big Ten, and we focus on the Hawkeyes, but can you really ever dream of a national title until you get an NBA lottery pick type guard or two?
That seems to be the way things are heading. And you look at this Baylor team, reminded me a lot of Villanova teams from the last few years, just with their guards and their NBA type players. And it seems like in the Big Ten, a lot of the best players are centers and guys who maybe don't fit the sort of NBA profile. I'm not sure that I still think a team can win a championship with a center as your star, but it's really tough to be a team that's got 3-4 NBA caliber guards and lottery pick type players. And a lot of the teams Iowa faced during the season just didn't have those.
Mm-hmm. And this narrative doesn't change. I mean, you look at the players projected to be the lottery picks, they're not Big Ten guys. Mm. It just doesn't change. And maybe it will when Michigan keeps pulling these high-ranked recruiting classes. I don't know, but I'll tell you what, if Jalen Suggs had been in the Big Ten, I would have ridden with that team to win the conference, no matter who it was.
Yeah, he was a difference maker. And I thought Monday night, the moment might have been a little bit too big for him, which sounds kind of stupid to say because he played so well in the Final Four game and hit the game when he shot, obviously, but picking up those 2 fouls right away and going up against Baylor's guards, who are just the best defensive guards around. And yeah, guard play is a part of it, and that a lot of people think offense, but for Baylor, defense is a big part of it too with their guards.
And that, there you go there with Iowa. We keep coming back to Iowa because that's where we are, but they don't play defense like that. They never have. And, Virginia 2 years ago, you got to have both sides of the ball or you simply are going to get stopped at some point. For Iowa, it was disturbingly early.
That's right. And I think everybody knew that was going to be the end of the road for Iowa. It was just a team that outscored it. And maybe we didn't. And because Iowa's guards had an off night that against Oregon, and it wasn't even really just that they had an off night. I mean, they were just completely taken out of the game by the athleticism and of Oregon's guards. And yes, it was much earlier than people would have expected. But I mean, I think we both know that was the way it was. It always seemed like it was going to end for Iowa this year. Lucas still scored 30 plus, and it didn't matter.
The reason I waited to do this wrap-up podcast is because I just didn't feel like Iowa fans were ready or willing to do a look ahead for the Hawkeyes after the flame out in the second round, because they got routed by a number 7 seed and an Oregon team that looked awfully mortal in its next game when it got routed by USC. And so who really wants to look ahead when you thought you had your best shot at a deep turning run and you couldn't cash in? And how are you going to, even have any interest right now in next season? But there's going to be a next season. And yeah, well, we all assume.
Yeah.
But it's hard to definitively talk about the Hawkeyes for next season, as with a lot of teams around the country, because we don't know what the roster is going to be precisely. We think we know what the nucleus will be, but I don't know for 100% certainty that Joe Wieskamp is gone. I just think so. I don't know if anybody's going to be a late addition to the roster from the transfer portal. I would assume that you've got to get somebody, but I don't know. I don't know a lot of things. I don't know. Is CJ Frederick going to get healthy, really, truly healthy? And then we can talk about the players who we are pretty sure are coming back. But right now, where do you see the Hawkeyes in April 2021?
Man, that's a hard question, like you said, because right now, after all these college championship games, it's always a quick look ahead. People are interested, especially teams that weren't in that Final Four championship picture, are are looking ahead to next year, seeing where they are in those way too early, as everybody calls them, top 25s. And maybe it's just me, but I feel like the interest in that isn't quite as high right now because there are so many impact players in the transfer portal right now. There are just so many players in general in the transfer portal right now that we don't know where they're going to end up, if they're possibly going to come back to their school for some of them. And it makes it really tough to predict next year. I think the last few years, obviously, there's been more and more transfers, and we could look at guys and say, well, that would take a team from like third in their conference to second if they could land that transfer. But there's players out there that can have teams make big jumps in the conference and national rankings. I don't know that Iowa's going to land any of those necessarily, but you have to kind of look at that within the context of the teams around Iowa as well. I think fans at this point are a little just discouraged by the continued second round exits from the Iowa men in the NCAA tournament. I think people expect it to be a pretty consistent NCAA tournament team, and that's, no matter who comes back next year, that's going to be the hope, is that they can get into the tournament again. But I don't really see a sense of excitement around the program that we saw the last few years, just because obviously you're losing possibly the greatest player the program has ever had, and potentially some other impact players too. So I just don't see the Hawkeye fans really too excited about next year, other than the fact that they will probably get to go to games again.
Yeah. It might be a case where the team exceeds expectations, but still in the back of everybody's mind, it's like, yeah, but ultimately, where does this end?
Yep.
Expectations, though, mean so much because there were so many expectations placed on this season's team. If you take away all those expectations and you say, okay, you're going to go 22-9, you're going to the tournament, you're going to get a number 2 seed, you beat North Carolina in a fairly one-sided game in the second half. You beat Wisconsin 3 times. You won by 30 points at Michigan State. You beat Michigan State twice in the same season. You went to Ohio State when Ohio State was in the top 5 and dominated them. Pretty good season. But then you put the number 5 preseason ranking on them, and you have the number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament on them. And you didn't challenge for the Big Ten title, really. And you didn't get out of the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. Those are all things you could have lived with without those great expectations. But with those expectations, it still, to me, feels like a hollow season.
That's right. And people are going to look back and remember some of those good times and how much fun it was to watch Garza on a nightly basis, and just being in the national conversation throughout the season and in the top 10 in the rankings, having some big games and some big wins. But ultimately, the expectations did matter, and Iowa fell short, and everybody associated with the team left disappointed after this year. And yes, in 10 years ago, you could have looked at this and said that's where Iowa wants to be, just in the tournament with a high seed and a chance to advance with players that are all Big Ten, all America caliber. And that's a great place to be. And if you can establish some consistency with that, it's tough to complain. But this was the chance to sort of end some streaks, the Sweet 16 streak, the conference championship streak. It was just a chance to just kind of forget all about that and just focus on that consistency. And the team wasn't able to meet that, and it was a big burden on them for sure. It was a lot to ask, but
they put it on themselves.
They did. They absolutely did. And so that they're going to be disappointed, just as disappointed as the fans, because they just couldn't meet that expectation that they set for themselves, and the fans did as well.
I think one more win in the tournament, get to the second weekend, I think it changes everything. Even if you play USC in the Sweet 16 and get thrashed, I still think it's like, but they got there. They got that monkey off their back. They beat the Pac-12 regular season champion to get into the Sweet 16, and they just ran up against a buzzsaw. But that's, it's like get from one side of the river to the other without a boat or a bridge. Now it just seems like it's just unreachable.
And just the way they lost to Oregon too. It was like all the other second round exits when Iowa was a 7, 8, 9, 10 seed, except this time it was the 2 seed and still just got blown out. And that I think that is just even more just discouraging and just tough to reckon with. If they had lost on a buzzer beater or in a back and forth game in the 90s, you kind of just tip your hat and you can look back and say it, not that it was a fluke, but it was right there. And just how similar it was to all the other second round games, despite Iowa being a 2 seed, is just, it's tough to handle if you're a fan.
And to have 3 of your 5 starters go scoreless in that game leads to criticisms and realizations. And now we've learned Connor McCaffrey's going to need both hips operated on. I guess he's already had one done, if I understand that right. We know CJ Frederick wasn't right physically, but still, it's like this is the gap when your guards can't produce in the moment of truth. I mean, we're beating a dead horse here. I should probably move on. But let's talk about, they do have players coming back. It's going to be a new team, really, even though there will be a lot of familiar faces. You're going to lose your top 3 scorers. Bohannon's not coming back. We're assuming Wieskamp isn't, and maybe we shouldn't because there's a long ways until the draft this year. It's not until late July. That's a long time. But from just indications I get, including from him himself after the last game, is he's a junior who probably thinks it's time to go try and, make the money and start that career. So we'll assume for now that he's gone. So you've Garza, Wieskamp, Bohannon. Okay, 3 top scorers. All right, let's see the new team, I guess. Who do we know that you're going to be able to count on? Let's assume Frederick gets healthy. I start with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I would start with him too. He's the guy that you turn to, that you want the ball in his hands and running the offense through on almost every possession. You want him taking a lot more shots. His usage percentage was very low this year. KenPom had him 8th on the team, and yet his offensive rating on KenPom was number 26 because he's such a good shooter. He's so efficient with the ball. He just needs to shoot more. I think part of that was him he passed up some shots quite a bit that I think he needed to take. So he needs to be just more selfish, and the team needs to focus on him getting the ball and scoring, because he can be a high volume scorer and shooter, I think. So I completely agree that it starts with him. And I think a thing he's going to work on is getting his own shot, but I don't think he's necessarily going to be ever amazing at that. So it's going to be on other guys to try to get him open and get him the ball. And that's where the offense starts if I'm Iowa.
Mm-hmm. Keegan Murray seems to already be money in the bank as far as what you're going to get with him, and it's good things. I'm curious about Patrick McCaffrey and Joe Toussaint more than anybody. And and we say all this, we don't know if anybody's going to go in the transfer portal. Okay, maybe tomorrow there will be news and this whole podcast will be, invalid, but you can't assume anything when I've seen some of the names that have come out. It's like, why are they leaving? But To me, Patrick McCaffrey and Joe Toussaint have got a lot of potential, a lot of upside. And they also have a rapport with each other on the court that's fun to watch. But they've got some distance to go, don't they?
They do. And you're exactly right that they have a ton of potential. And the way Toussaint can blow by defenders is different than Iowa has had at the point guard position for the last few years. He's a good passer when he's under control. Patrick McCaffrey is similar. When he is a type of athlete and with a type of body that is rare in the Big Ten. He's capable of doing a lot of things on the offensive end and the defensive end. It's just a matter of being under control, probably still putting on more weight. And obviously he had some extenuating circumstances with that. So that's, something that he's going to keep getting better at, we assume. And it's just those guys playing more like the veterans that they will be, which is a lot to ask because you still look at them and it's not like they've started a bunch of games or, played big minutes at the end of a bunch of high level games just because of everybody that's in front of them. But you're looking for them to take that next step and be leaders and be guys that don't turn the ball over, be consistent players with good shooting percentages, improving their outside shots, being consistent defenders, rebounders, at least in McCaffrey's case. And if those guys can take a step, I think that ups Iowa's ceiling significantly.
Mm-hmm. I love watching Toussaint play. I know that he frustrates some people at times, but what you said to me hit the nail on the head. There hasn't been another Iowa point guard like him in the McCaffrey era. Mm-hmm. And when he's right, it's just a refreshing difference. And I think that if he knows he's going to play 28, 30 minutes a game, it's going to make him a better player. There's been no rhythm or rhyme to his usage. And I understand that. They had a veteran lineup. But it just seems to me like when he knows he's going to play or he's going to get extended minutes, he's a better player. If he's out there for 7 straight minutes, he's a way better player than if he's out there for 3 minutes. And maybe that's just my imagination or my interpretation of something that isn't necessarily true. But I see him that if you give this guy the ball, I think he's going to make you happy that you did.
Mm-hmm. I agree that he's a guy that can change games, and I think his shooting has to get better, but that's something that can be worked on in the offseason for sure. And knowing that he's going to have a major role probably makes a guy want to stick around and get better and prove that he can be a starter at the Big Ten level. I think it'll be interesting to see just kind of how the Iowa offense works too with a little bit different roster construction, and there could be transfers added. I'm sure we'll talk about what maybe Iowa's philosophy should be in getting transfers. But if you just look at the roster right now, that the way that the lane could be open, the way that Iowa could play, I think could suit Toussaint a lot better. Obviously, that goes without saying, you would rather have Luka Garza on your team than you want it. But I think with Garza out and Nunji isn't going to be back, and Murray being able to stretch the floor as your big guy right now, that could be an offense that could really suit Toussaint really well. Just an open lane, being able to have the space to create and either get to the basket or kick to shooters, kick to cutters. He's good at finding cutters when he gets to the baseline. I think Toussaint has a chance based on that offense to really explode in the upcoming season.
I also am curious to see what Tony Perkins and Aaron Hlas bring to this. They played in very short stretches when they were used for the most part. Hlas had a good game at Maryland. Perkins had his moments. To me, what struck me about the two is I didn't get a great sense for their games, but neither one shrank in the moment. When they were called upon, it's like they felt like they belonged out there. I just sense that. And that's a good thing. But now I think you got to find out, are these guys Big Ten players or not? And I know that McCaffrey likes them, but he had the luxury of not needing them this past season. He's going to need them now.
Absolutely. And I think the potential issue you run into is you're looking at some guards coming back with Toussaint, Perkins, Hlas, and then you throw Connor McCaffrey in there too. Shooting doesn't jump out at you. And obviously you hope to have CJ Frederick back and healthy, and he can be one of the best shooters in the Big Ten, if not the country. So that takes that away. But I just don't know in today's game that you can have an offense built around a bunch of guards that can't shoot. And so that is a token to more playing time if you're those guys. They're great. They look like the defensive potential is great. That they came in and had some good moments in some games. I think it was the Michigan State game at home that Perkins really changed the game on with his defense. So that's a great start. That's a great way to start for a young player. And now you just hope that some of these guys can sort of find a role on offense, because Toussaint kind of already has the dribble penetration down, and those guys seem like especially Perkins seems like he's capable of getting to the rim. But I think you want to see some improved shooting out of all these guards coming back if Iowa's offense is going to click the way they want it to.
And I don't know how well these guys can shoot because they simply didn't take very many perimeter shots. Perkins, without hesitation, shot a three-pointer in the Oregon game and made it. It was his first three-pointer of his college career. But the fact that he didn't hesitate and fired it, I thought, to me, that was a good sign. I think Toussaint, it could be a decent three-point shooter. But again, you haven't really needed to see it, and the freedom hasn't really been there. But he looks like if it's there, he's going to take it.
Yeah, that's definitely what you want to see. And maybe some of that was just those guys knew that, okay, either Bohannon, Wieskamp, Frederick, even Garza is out here. Those guys are good, established three-point shooters. Their role was to get them the ball. And so maybe that changes this year when they're confident and they are guys that are going to be out on the floor a lot. Maybe they're shooting. We'll just see more of it, and we'll see that they are good shooters. And that's the hope, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Right now, there are over 1,200 players in the transfer portal. The number goes up by dozens every day. But I look at the list for big guys because that's obviously what Iowa needs. Slim pickings. Mm-hmm. I mean, guys who could come in and actually help that team next year. I don't know. I'm probably missing a lot of them because I'm looking at 6'9", 6'10s, et cetera. And maybe I should be looking at 6'7", 6'8s. But they do need a body, don't they? I mean, you can't count on Josh Agundale to give you anything next season. And anything he gives you is going to be a bonus.
Yeah, and when I was watching Baylor last night, that was a small team built around guards, and they did have some bodies, but they were smaller than most Big Ten teams. And I'm in no way saying that Iowa is going to be like Baylor. That's obviously not true. But that's an interesting blueprint, I think, when you have these athletic guards coming back, good defenders, if they can develop into good shooters. That's the type of profile that Iowa might be interested in. That being said, I think you want to at least have the option of having a center, especially to compete in the Big Ten defensively. You want to have a big body in there. Keegan Murray is outstanding, but he's not going to be playing 40 minutes per game, obviously. A name that entered the transfer portal just Tuesday morning was Liam Robbins from Minnesota, who a lot of Iowa fans wish they would have had a chance to get when he came out of Drake, and obviously went to Minnesota to follow his uncle. He's from Davenport. I don't necessarily know that he's going to be looking at Iowa or Iowa's going to be looking at him, but I think that's probably the type of player that most fans are really hoping to get. A guy that's proven himself at the power conference level and is a solid scorer and defender that can make an impact right away. The problem is a lot of teams are going to be looking for those guys. And there's just no guarantee that just because you lost a couple transfers, you're going to get anybody back.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of dots to be dotted and connections to be made between. The next month is going to be interesting. I follow this. This is college basketball free agency. There's no sit out period this year, and the whole thing is just crazy, and I love it because it's chaos.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you've got teams in the Big Ten who've been hammered. Rutgers, which is Miles Johnson's leaving for a good reason. He's a fantastic student who wants to go finish his engineering out on the West Coast, and he's a West Coast guy. But Jacob Young leaves Rutgers. Adam Miller leaving Illinois. I mean, that struck me as crazy, but these players want more. They want the perfect fit, I guess. Minnesota's whole team, it seems like, is in the transfer portal. So I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, you look around and Nate Reavers is going to play another season from Wisconsin, a 6'11" guy. Well, what's he got in mind? Marcus Carr, if he doesn't go pro, apparently is on the lookout for a new home. That's an all Big Ten player. This is insane. And like I said, I love it.
I do too. And I just think it's funny that people overreacting. Oh, there's 1,200 players in the transfer portal, like heads exploding, like they made a commitment to their schools. And it's like, oh my gosh, who cares? I think it's funny. I saw somebody tweeted, I can't remember now, but they're like, you can't convince me that every player entering the transfer portal doesn't think they're just going to go to Kentucky and that's going to be their answer. So some of these guys are going to find out that they can't get to the spot maybe that they wanted because there's just so many players. And I mean, I think every power conference team is going to have the opportunity to bring in a couple guys because they lost a couple guys, and there's only so many spots to go around at the power conference level. So it's going to be really fun to follow, and we're not going to be able to make solid predictions for another couple of months.
A lot of coaches are very comfortable taking transfers, always have been. Fran McCaffrey isn't. Jared Utoff was sort of a unusual deal. They'd recruited Utoff before, a local guy. They knew who he was. And then a couple of years ago, they had a real need for guards, and they took on Bakari Evelyn, who did a nice job for them. But McCaffrey's very big on intimately knowing players and wanting them to be good fits as people on his roster and so forth. And I think this is maybe a little harder for him than the average college coach.
It seems like it. And you can sort of sense the frustration some fans have with that because the national writers will tweet out, oh, this transfer is already heard from these 20 schools, and Iowa's almost never on that list. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad strategy to focus on guys that you're comfortable with and not just throwing your name out every single time. But with the amount of transfers that are out there today, the eligibility rules, the way the game is changing in general, it is worth exploring that philosophy. And maybe it's just a situation where if he does feel more comfortable taking on transfers, he's going to be looking at guys that he recruited out of high school that he pursued, that he was comfortable with. But it is, I get why fans get kind of annoyed to not see Iowa coming up on some of these lists. But it's not like you're going to get every transfer anyway. So if the targeted approach works and he gets the guys that he wants, then it's the smart thing to do. But we'll have to wait and see if that's how it works out.
Okay, men's basketball. we move on, but the best story in the state this coming winter is going to be the women's basketball in this state. It just is. That's not going on a limb. The Hawkeye women didn't talk in October and November about going deep in the NCAA tournament. They simply got to the tournament, won 2 games, and got to the Sweet 16. Iowa State was agonizingly close to the Sweet 16 itself. And those 2 teams have almost everybody who matters coming back. And those players include Caitlin Clark and Ashley Jones. One led the nation in scoring and was second in assists, and the other one was, I think, 5th in scoring nationally. Jones, is an old player. She's a sophomore. The Iowa thing with Clark, we're assuming Carver Hawkeye is going to be open to the public next year for, in full force. Certainly hope that's the case. I think this thing's going to explode. I mean, I think Iowa women's basketball is going to be a big event next season. What sayeth you?
I completely agree. And we kind of talked about it on a previous podcast, how Caitlin Clark's profile is going to go national, and it happened already. I mean, that she was one of the top stories in sports for a few days there, along with Paige Beckers from UConn. And that matchup helped, obviously, but just Clark's performance in the NCAA tournament. And people are going to be aware of that this year. And it's like we said before, she's just, not only is she outstanding, but the style of play is just incredible to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the type of basketball anybody would pay to see. Just
and
the
that's
way that
why.
Yes. And
Megan Gustafson was the National Player of the Year, but Megan Gustafson's a post player, and as good as it gets. But Caitlin Clark is a basketball player. I mean, she had Kevin Durant commenting on her. It didn't matter who you were in the national basketball scope. It seemed like they instantly knew who she was and they responded to her.
Yeah. And it reminds me so much of Sabrina Ionescu from Oregon a couple of years ago, and just the way that she just transcended women's basketball and college basketball and became a national sports story. And that's the type of player we're looking at with Caitlin Clark. Ball in her hands, every possession, ability to shoot and make from anywhere, excellent passer. And the hope would be that Iowa can jump into the national picture as a team, and they're obviously ahead of where we expected them to be this year in the Sweet 16. And not only are you gonna be looking at Carver Hawkeye Arena having outstanding attendance numbers, I think you're going to be seeing Iowa on national television a lot. They're going to be, ESPN is going to want those. They're going to want Iowa games. Last year, fans were just trying to get Iowa on Big Ten Network, and Big Ten Network finally stepped up and started broadcasting.
Just a couple months ago.
Yeah. and now anytime ESPN has a Big Ten women's basketball game, I mean, they always want Maryland, but they're going to want Iowa now because that's a draw.
Yeah, I mean, and both, I mean, Clark is going to be surrounded by a better team than she was this year. She just is. I mean, they started 3 sophomores and a junior besides Clark, and good players, They're adding another good post player in a young woman from, is it Colorado?
Mm-hmm.
Addison O'Grady's her name.
Yep.
And she's supposed to be very good, and putting her, having her in the blocks along with Cinzano, who was a very good story in itself, the way she emerged.
Mm-hmm.
God, they're going to have a good team. I mean, nobody's picking them number 1 in the country, but it's a top 10 team, and with excitement to go with it. And Iowa State, this was an injury-racked team, but still, they won just enough, it seemed like, to get into the tournament. But they get there, and it's like you see them with 3 freshman starters and Ashley Jones. They had the Big 12 Freshman of the Year again this year. It's like, they're going to be really you know?
Yeah.
This state, epicenter is an overstatement, but this is going to be a real hotbed, a real focal point for women's college basketball.
And it really can't be said enough that not only are they going to be really good, but they're both just such fun teams to watch with the way they can score. And Iowa, to get where it wants to be, just has to improve defensively. I mean, they're going to give up a lot of points because of the pace they play and just their style of play. But it's a similar conversation as the men's team was coming into this year, where they just have to be decent defensively to get where they really want to be. But regardless, it's going to be a super fun team to watch, both Iowa and Iowa State. Iowa State, I guess, lost Feuerbach to the transfer portal, but we assume that Espen Miller McGraw will be back from injury, and then the Jones sisters back. I cannot wait for the Iowa State game. I love the Cyhawk basketball games anyway because it's it feels like such a big game in December instead of like waiting for the conference season. And it's just one game that you can look back on every year. But I wish they were playing 2 or 3 times next year because that is going to be such a fun game.
Oh, it's going to be in Hilton, and I think you'll have scalpers.
Yeah. Very well could be.
Well, ESPN put out its way too early top 25 for the women yesterday, and Iowa was 9th, Iowa State 12th. That's a pretty good starting point.
That's outstanding.
That's all I've got. That's it. I'm ready to see all these transfers roll in, roll out. Garza gets his Wooden Award later today, and put a bow on this and just go sit outside and listen to birds or something for a while.
That sounds outstanding. And then football will be here before we know it.
I'm in no hurry. Give me some summer. Give me some vaccinated summer.
My first vaccine is on Thursday. I'm so excited. I cannot wait for life to get back to somewhat normal. And next year, college basketball season, hopefully it's like back to normal completely.
Yes. Well, thanks for doing this with me here this winter, and we'll see what the future brings. But this college basketball season was something that I needed, and I was glad we had. And I'm usually just ready to kick it out the door once it's over, but I could have gone a while longer this year.
I felt the same way. I felt like last year when everything got canceled, obviously I was disappointed, but I was kind of a little burned out just from all the other sports going on at this time of year. But having college basketball back this year, it was just so nice to have during a long winter of staying inside. So I'm gonna miss it.
The UCLA Gonzaga game just made you want more.
Yes, I haven't had a feeling like that watching a sporting event in a while. It's just like 2 teams I couldn't care less who wins, but was just cheering every shot, standing up, chills, yelling at nothing. And oh my God, what a classic.
Yeah. And as great as the moment was when Suggs banked in that 3-pointer, part of me was like, no, I want him to play some more.
I know when UCLA made the shot, I was like, double overtime, let's go. I'll take 6 overtimes. And as excited as the Suggs shot, after I was like so excited at that shot and just like everything that happened, I was like, man, now the game's over.
Yeah.
We have to wait till Monday and kind of got a dud, but
as you know, as silly and as sometimes stupid as big time sports can be, it's games like that you say, I wish everybody got it. I wish people who didn't like sports could feel this, because this is why we keep coming back.
Absolutely right. Nothing beats it.
We're not coming back. Not tomorrow anyway, not next week, but we'll see what the future brings. Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you.
Okay. And thanks to everybody for watching, listening, etc. Appreciate you very much. Have a great spring and summer.